This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze, the journey through life. We're all on it, and we've all made plans probably for years. And if you're anything like I am, a lot of those plans, we've taken detours. And sometimes we get to a spot and we say, how did we get here? This isn't where I thought my journey was going to go. But you know what? It's your life. You get to make those choices. And I think it's really important to understand that we do have choices. Sometimes they're not easy. I'll be the first one to admit. That's why we are in that maze and sometimes hitting the wall. My guest today is Carly Pepin. And when I read your bio, Carly, I love when you said people come to you to master their mindset. And mindset is a word that we've been using very frequently. A lot of people I know will say to me, what does that really mean? Well, what you're thinking about, your thoughts. How did you get those thoughts? So give us a little bit of background of who you are and how you got to be that person that we're coming to.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me, Karen. And yeah, so initially, I didn't think too much about mindset when I was growing up. I thought about growth in a sense, and you want to kind of be a better person and have a better life, those normal things we think about. But I didn't really think about mindset until I left Los Angeles to move to Australia, thinking that that would change my circumstances, make me happy. I thought LA was like just the worst place on the planet, which I'm back here, by the way, and I love it. Yeah. And then I got to Australia, and all of my pain and all of my problems came with me. And I actually noticed them this time because I didn't have the distractions, the things that I was judging before I realized were just actually distractions of things that I enjoyed. It was how I was feeling on the inside. And that's when I really started to dive into mindset and trying to understand how to shift our perceptions so that I could shift how I'm feeling, no matter where I am in the world. And I got really lucky. It's, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I found my first teacher when I was out there on mindset very randomly. It was definitely on accident, but obviously on purpose as well. And she really helped me to start the journey to understanding why I was thinking the things that I was thinking, where they were coming from, how to shift the perceptions and the mindset so my life would also shift as well.
And so many of us believe, well, if only I could move away, if only I could be here or there. And the if onlys, we have to create those, number one. Um, my son was one who kept saying to me, I just have to move away from here. Everything would be better when I move. Well, his first move away was absolutely horrendous. Okay. It sounds
Like
like
mine.
you went through something like that too.
Yes.
Um, but he learned a
Yeah.
great deal in that time. And when he came home, he said, I don't think I ever want to move again. And I said, but not everything happens the way it happened to you. And you grew up. You know now that you took your baggage with you and you unpacked it. And he looked at me and goes, yeah. And he made some changes. And 6 months later, he moved again. And he's
Awesome.
very successful because now when those thoughts start to come, it's like, why am I thinking this? Um, and something that I tried teaching him a long time ago, but mothers can't teach their kids how to think. But give us a little bit of background because we come with a lot of baggage through life. We're taught things, we hear things, we see things, and we don't even realize we're holding on to them until all of a sudden one day, like you said, I'm unhappy. I'm just going to pick up and go.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we think and the way that we think the world should be or is meant to be that are actually incorrect. And you're right, we don't notice it. Sometimes it's a big life event that helps us become aware of it. Sometimes, it's mentors, coaches, teachers, sometimes your friends. But what winds up happening is we get this confirmation bias that's so strong that all of a sudden it's like, this is the way. And it does, I will say traveling has been something that's been very helpful for me any country that you go to, being from the United States, it's very interesting to go see other cultures and what's important to them versus what's important to me, what's important culturally as a woman, as a man, and knowing like my culture is not good or bad and theirs isn't good or bad. We're just different.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, there's really like, it's funny, there's no right or wrong way to do things in the world. Culturally speaking, one culture is going to say this is right, one culture is going to say this is wrong. So when we think about like our mindset, it really is fine tuning and refining how we look at those thoughts that come up, that the things that we're attached to. So if we say something always has to be this way or never has to be another way, that is an attachment. And always and a never is basically a very concrete black and white perception, where the world is so big and there's so many people and it's so dynamic. How could we ever say that like one thing is going to make the whole world spin and make it spin perfectly? Like none of us know. There's too much. There's
Right.
too much for any of us to have any certainty of like how that would actually work. So it's finding the grays by shifting our perception and seeing that, maybe the thing that we thought that was so amazing, seeing some of the ways that it's challenging and the things that we thought were wrong and really challenging. It's like, well, how is that actually inspiring and fulfilling? And it's cool because I do have the opportunity to work with people from other countries and cultures. And I've worked with a lot of women in other cultures where, being from especially Los Angeles in America,
Yeah.
like we would consider them being, repressed or suppressed or something. And they'll look up to us as Western women for how we get to act and behave. But when I go in and actually look at how that serves them and their unique purpose in their life, they'll get tears of inspiration and gratitude for the life they have and how our life wouldn't serve them. You're born where you're meant to be born. Yeah, we don't need to be comparing our lives to anyone
Right.
else's. It doesn't do us any good.
But
Yeah.
we tend to do that, especially as we're growing up. And I think that's been part of the, at least the American culture for a very long time. Um, I remember the first elementary school I went to, I was very included. Okay. I just got along with everybody. But then my parents moved to a slightly more affluent neighborhood, and my parents were not affluent, but they could keep their own. I couldn't. I didn't know how at 9 years old. And my mother made my clothes, and all my friends on the weekend went to the mall and bought new clothes. And I would come to school on Monday, and they never told me I didn't fit in, but I thought I didn't fit in. And so I held this grudge for a very long time, even into my adulthood. It was like, well, can I go to that group? Oh, I'm not wearing the right kind of clothes. No, I can't go. And then one day I woke up and said, well, who said I couldn't? And I realized it was me. I was making those judgments. And until I finally said, okay, I'm going to break out of this. And if they don't want me, well, I'll just go to the next group down the road. But as kids, we don't want to do that. We want to be where all the popular people are. So I'm sure you see that a lot in your practice. How do you, I mean, luckily I broke up myself, but a lot of people don't. They don't know how to do that. So what are some of the tips that maybe you help people with?
Yeah. So when we think about if we're in those situations and circumstances where we're comparing ourselves to these other people, individuals, sometimes it's people you look up to, it's realizing first off, nothing's actually ever missing inside you. The thing that you see on the outside is what you have on the inside. You're just too humble to admit you have it. This is with the things that inspire us and also challenge us. We are what we see in the world. And it's interesting because if I told you the person that you admire most, that you got to meet them, right? And I was going to set you up and you were going to have a dinner, there would be a certain amount of elation that you would have, and you'd be very nervous. And you're nervous because you don't perceive yourself as the equal. If I got to show you that everything that you see in that person you have inside yourself, it's just in your own unique purpose, your priorities, what's actually important to you, as opposed to what's important to them, you could sit at that dinner and you could just hang out with them like they're colleagues, normal colleagues, because that's the truth. Everyone on this planet is equal in that form. And an example is, for example, like someone might have, we just did a wealth workshop and we do this with people. You go out and you see, and there's all these individuals on the planet who have, great wealth, and let's say they have billions of dollars in cash flow. You have a great amount of wealth stored in what's most important to you. And for some people, they'll tell me my family is priceless. My spirituality is priceless, right? And if I asked you, like, well, would I trade? I'll trade you. I'll trade you all that money. I'll make you a billionaire. And they look at me and they go, no, 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 no. And I'm like, that's how valuable it is to you. And you realize that's what I say. Nothing's missing inside you. Anything you see on the outside, you have within, it's just in your own form. And that really helps transition it. And it's funny because when I love clothing and fashion, by the way. So as you're talking about that story, I could see it immediately. You may not have been able to go to the mall and shop for the fancy designers, but your mom is the designer. I
Right.
was like, so you have it, you just have it in your own unique form. And it was a different form than theirs, but it's just as valuable, right? And then when we get to see that, we get to utilize our gifts, our priorities, our life, like to a greater degree. So making sure when we get those comparisons, it's like, okay, well, what do I think this person has? And then it's like, well, where do I actually do that? Where do I do that? And not just for the things that we admire, but also for the things that challenge us, because we'll puff ourselves up with pride trying to pretend we're a better person. We're all people. We all get mad sometimes. We all get sad sometimes. Like, it's totally normal. We get frustrated. We get angry. Like, it's very, 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 very normal. So just pretending we don't have it is just, pretending you're not existing. Like, you're just a human being. Yeah.
But it's funny that you bring up, if you can meet somebody or be with somebody who you admire and you think, oh, how am I going to handle being in their company? Um, my youngest son, is very much into music, and Tony Bennett was performing here, and this is probably about 20 years ago. And my brother had a connection, and he got us backstage passes. And my son just walks up to him and he says, Mr. Bennett, my name is Alex. Someday I'm going to be a bigger star than you. And my first reaction was, oh no, how could you say that? But I looked at him and I thought, you know what? This is what he wants to do. This is who he wants to be. And I remember Tony Bennett looking at him going, with that attitude, you probably will be. And it was that meeting and watching, I think my son was like 11 or 12 years old at the time. I thought, if that can come out of his mouth and he can be that relaxed, I can be too. And so I was learning from him that, hey, I can be whoever I want to be. Um, my biggest challenge was in the beginning when people would say, oh, so you met Tony Bennett, you got to talk to him. What was it like? Just like you said, he was a colleague, he was a friend of the family, he was just another person. When he was on stage, yes, that was totally different. But sitting there and having that conversation with him, it was like, I can talk to anybody now. So we do have that inside of us, but it's hard to get it out of us, isn't it?
Sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of like a different flow in our lives, right? Like your son's a great example. So, when he's 11, like he doesn't have all these outside injections to the same degree as when you grow up of how you should be, how you're supposed to be, what this looks like or that looks like. We just see an 11-year-old who's inspired by someone and wants to basically do what they're doing and more. Right. And that's what they're demonstrating in that moment. They don't put Tony above him. He's not putting Tony below him. He's being like, Tony, you are my equal. I am going to, do more than you, because something in his brain saw a beautiful vision for his future. Right. So what'll wind up happening with us is we'll get to a certain stage in our own development, in our career, in our life, and we'll get to a certain level of achievement. And then all of a sudden, we're doing really well there. And then it's time to go to the next step and the next stage. And so after that, we're going to have more comparisons. We're going to be moving forward and have more judgments on ourselves. We're going to have more challenges to overcome as we encounter these things on our journey to get us to the next stages. And it happens at every level. I remember even when I was first speaking, right? The first time I spoke, it was nerve-wracking. It was nerve-wracking. And people, they'll say, "You're such a good speaker." And I was like, this is the first like 2 years of my speaking career is doing Instagram videos, those ones that used to disappear on your story. Cause I was like, at least they disappear and I'll feel comfortable. And I did that for like 2 years every day. And that's as much as I could handle. And then the first time you talk in front of 4 people, 5 people, then you start doing podcasts and it's like the audience gets bigger. And if I talk in front of 1 million people one day and I'm in front of an audience, I'm going to feel different. That's going to make me nervous before I actually get to that point. And there's going to be things for me to own inside myself to know and have the certainty to get on that stage and know that I belong there. So avoid the maze of journey. Like you've got the journey on the back, right?
Right.
Like, there's a big journey. And I was like, yeah, it's the journey of this ebb and flow of our own personal development. And at each stage, like a great way to catch it is listening to our language. We have this thing that it's called imperative language. And inside of us, whenever we're saying, I should do this, I'm supposed to do this, I have to, I need to, I must, I've got to, you ask yourself the question, according to who? And that's the individual or individuals that you're actually comparing yourself to. And you're perceiving that their form is better than yours. So you're shooting yourself into replicating, duplicating the things that they're doing in your form. It's a great way to catch it. And the second that I get that answer, like according to who, and it's like, sometimes it's even according to my husband,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's husband, sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's going to be your son because you're like, I'm around him all the time. He's doing inspiring stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, what does that person have that I think I'm missing? And again, find it in yourself, find it in your own form so that when you're in those situations on your journey, you have certainty that nothing's missing inside you. You have certainty you belong where you are.
Well, I know at my last corporate job, one of the things that um, one of our directors was really good at was saying, we're going to look at your strengths. Don't worry about your weaknesses because everybody's got weaknesses. But if you think about them and you try to strengthen them, your strengths are going to start to fall apart because you're not exercising. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, did that make a lot of sense? Because I would constantly be thinking about, oh, I've got to work on this because I'm really not good at it. And next thing I know, you know, what I was good at, it was falling apart. And so I brought that into my coaching. And I've had a number of people say, why didn't anybody ever tell me this before? You know, I just kept looking at, the fact that, I can't walk on a balance beam. Well, okay, do you need to walk on a balance beam? Number one. Number two, what are you trying to do on that balance beam? And they'd look at me and go, I don't know, but my friend exercises and she uses one. Okay, that's your friend. What do you want to use? And it wasn't until I started coaching, I started taking care of myself better as well. It was like, yeah, I don't have to do that because somebody else is doing it. And you're right, sometimes a husband or a child or a parent is going to want you to do something. It may not be what you want to do, but sometimes that's part of life. We do those things. We try to do them more our way than their way. So I want to go back a little bit. You said you went to Australia because you thought you were going to find something there. Why did you pick Australia, first of all? And do you know what you were looking for there?
I picked Australia because I had already visited and I just really loved it. And I just love beaches. I love being outside. Australia is a similar culture, right? If anyone had ever been to Los Angeles, like it gets very hot. So we can tend to be very outdoors driven, and especially those of us who like to go to the beach, we're very outdoors driven. So Australia is definitely in alignment with that. And when I went, I was like, this is amazing. I also had a friend out there, and so he, funny enough, had an extra room in his house that he was looking to rent. So it kind of all synced up really, really well. And it was right on time. Yeah. And when I went out there, I was basically looking for a new life. I did not like my life. I was upset, like with my career path. I was upset. It's funny because I had that, like, I had a house, I had, a pretty decent car, and I owned a house, and I was young. And I had a great job. I had multiple great positions, and I was like, I just not happy. I'm not happy. So I kind of went down the path of everything I thought I was supposed to do. And I was also really having a hard time meeting people. I was trying to date, and it was just really hard. And I just wasn't feeling satisfied. So I figured, I was like, well, it must be LA, right? It's the people in LA, it's the culture, it's the environment. And I was like, and yeah, I just want to get out of it, because if I go to Australia, I was like, it's going to be better. Right. So when I got there, like I said, it was very challenging. It was very, very challenging. I realized, yeah, I was like, oh my God, now I just left everyone I love. I was like, I love my family. I love my best friend. I was like, what am I doing here? All by myself, all alone. And it just really made me start to do some introspection. What I did find is that the opportunity to start doing some introspection, the opportunity to start getting out of what I thought life was supposed to look like and start to create a life that I wanted it to look like, starting to ask the questions of what that was for me personally. And yeah, really letting go a lot of these, again, like I say, like going to other countries and stuff, it's been one of the best personal development experiences I've had, because you're in another country and you're growing up in Los Angeles your whole life, and the whole city tells you this is the way life is. And then you come to Australia and you're like, you could live this way. I'll try it. And then you're like, this is kind of fun. And then you come home and, there's a certain part of Australian lifestyle I've adopted. I've lived in Canada, Canadian lifestyle I've adopted. So it's like all these different, and my husband says it, like, even the way I dress, he's like, you're like from everywhere. Like there's just stuff from all over different parts of the world. And I'm like, yeah, because now it's like, okay, well, what do you love from all these different cultures that just suits you? It really suits you. So yeah, it's helpful to step outside of your comfort zone. If you can't leave, like I do suggest coaching. Coaching is really helpful. You're a coach. I'm a coach. I also love getting coached. I can't imagine not having my own
Right,
coach.
I know.
Yeah, yeah. Like they just the reflections that you get as well. It's like traveling for me, because they just sit there and I'll be talking to them and they're like, "Did you just hear what you said?" And sometimes she'll have to make me repeat it like 3 times, and then it clicks and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so biased. I didn't even catch that." And she'll laugh and she'll be like, "Let's work on it." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." So to me, that's also a dynamic of traveling. But yeah, really getting that awareness and shifting our perceptions.
And you make a very good point. Not all of us can just pick up, go to another country. Maybe we can't even go to another city for whatever those reasons are. I found when I was sort of forced out of uh, corporate America, um, it wasn't by my doing. I loved what I did, but the culture was killing me, and everybody around me saw that. And so I was sort of like, there's the door, Karen. Like, the sooner you get out, you'll be better. And the first couple weeks, it was like, oh my God, my world has come to an end. I loved what I was doing. But then I started thinking about what was it that I loved? And within 30 days, I came to my husband and my son and I said, um, I'm going to start blogging. And I found a company that needed a blog writer. I mean, they like fell from the sky because it was something that I put out there and it came to me. And once I started blogging, then I said, I want to do a podcast. And my husband said to me, okay, do it. Now he'll never say to me, you don't know anything about it. First thing he said was, what do you think you need? And I said, you're the IT guy. You tell me. And he goes, no, figure it out. And once I did, we put everything together. And at the time, we did overkill with soundboards and cameras and everything all over the room. But what I found was there was this thing inside of me that it didn't make any difference what my age was. I could do it. And that's what I hope our listeners are hearing today is that, yeah, if you can pick up and go someplace else and find yourself, wonderful. But if you can't, walk outside yourself, walk into a different room, sit in a different chair. And that was one of the things that I did, which I didn't understand at the time that made much sense. But we have a chair in our living room. Nobody ever really sits in it. If company comes, they sit in it because it just seems like it's the most comfortable chair. I started sitting in the chair every day. And one day I realized I'm sitting in this chair. Wow. And I said it to my husband. He goes, yeah, the chair looks good on you. And I realized it helped change me. It helped me look at the room in a different perspective, but also look at my life differently. So I went from saying I can't do things to saying I should have done things to saying this is what I'm going to do. And when somebody questions me and says, how are you going to do it? I just say, watch me. And it may not be the same way you do it. Okay. Your coaching practice, I'm sure, is totally different from my coaching practice. And that's okay. And like you said, if I'm going to coach, then I better be going to a coach because I got to keep my head on straight too. So you mentioned Canada. So that's where you are now, correct?
No, I'm just outside of Los Angeles now. So I lived in Canada and I came back. Yes.
Okay. All around the world. So what you didn't like about life in Los Angeles in the past, do you like it now? Or is it that you just like yourself better?
It's one of my favorite cities in the world. So every time I travel, I come back to Los Angeles and I'm outside of LA now and I'll go back into the city center again
Right.
and live closer there. But I just love it so much. And when I got back from Australia the first time, I remember coming home. And at first I didn't want to come home, but I thought, you know what? What did I love about Australia so much? I was like, well, I explored it. And I thought to myself, I live in one of the greatest cities in the world. Like people would kill to come here. I was like, I'm gonna live here like I'm on vacation. And I did that until I found basically my own unique culture and things that I love to such a degree that it's just all incorporated in my life, like period. And I love my life. I actually like love my life down there. And I find too, it's when we're also comfortable with ourselves on the inside, we're comfortable creating those lives in other places. And I will say it takes some time. Like for anyone who wants to move, it takes 3 to 6 months depending on the neighborhood. I'm noticing if it's a big city, it's about 3 to 6 months to get settled. I'm in a smaller town right now. It took me longer. And I was like, so interesting. But you're starting to notice like there's patterns and stuff of like getting adjusted and getting comfortable. So the more stuff there is around, it's easier to integrate, and the less stuff, it takes a little bit longer. But never just having those, it's like not having those unrealistic expectations on what life is supposed to look like. Like it's kind of fun. Like any place you go, it's like you create what you want your life to look like. And if you are in one place and you're unable to travel or move, then you create in that one place what you would love your life to look like. That's not a unique quality that I have or Karen has. It's something that everyone on this planet has. So if we're not giving ourselves the opportunities to do the self-reflection, to do the deeper work inside of ourselves, to be able to move forward and live that, we can't expect ourselves to wake up every day feeling fulfilled and inspired by our days. Like it takes work, but this is the work that pays off exponentially. It's not like going to a job and getting a paycheck every couple weeks. It's like every day you wake up and you're so inspired by your life, that's your paycheck. That's your paycheck. So when you think about it, yeah, it's really hard work sometimes, but man, is it worth it? The rewards are far greater than the challenges that come from it.
Well, and I mentioned when my son moved to Texas last year, in the beginning, I mean, it was culture shock coming from the Midwest, going to Texas. Um, he had always lived at home, except for that one small time that he moved away. Um, and so it was, everything was culture shock. Living on his own, living in Texas, brand new job. The best part was he loves what he does as his career. And so that propelled him. But it took him almost a year to finally start to say, okay. And then he realized, I'm not living in the right area. This is not where I need to live. He found where he needs to live, at least for now. And I loved watching his transitions because he thought them through. I mean, he started saying almost a year ago, he'd only been in his place 2 months, and he goes, I'm going to be moving at the end of my lease, and I won't start really looking. And he had a time plan and he followed it. And it was so interesting to watch because I thought, you know, you're thinking it through, you're getting it from your gut. Okay. It's not just things that are up in your head. And when I went to visit him at Christmas time, he had just moved in. And he said, I really want you here because I want you to help me get settled. And I looked at him and I said, you've never wanted me to touch your things, even when you were a little boy. And he goes, I know, but I want to feel like an adult. I don't want to feel like I'm in a fraternity house. And, you know, those are the great things that when you start to let your brain and your body work together and feel it, we make some great changes. And you're right, we all have the ability because, I was told as a little girl, hey, you know what? You'll become a teacher someday and you'll have a house with picket fence, and never happened. So tell our listeners how they can find you, how they can connect with you, because obviously you talk to clients worldwide. Wonderful Zoom helps us do that. So how can they find you?
They can find me on my website, carlypepin.com, and then they can connect with me there one-on-one or all my social media stuff. Whatever is your favorite, you could go follow me there.
That is wonderful. Well, I love Los Angeles as well, but only to visit. I'm not, I don't think I could live in all that traffic. That's just, that's just me. I like living in the suburbs of Cleveland where even the traffic into the city, rush hour maybe takes 25 minutes. So I'm
Wow.
very spoiled. I like it like this. But you know what? If my mindset were to change, I would come experience it. Thank you so much, Carly. We will talk to you soon and have a great day.